So you went and got yourself a law degree. Congratulations, and welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Moronu. I created the show to teach lawyers how to work in their gifts and live their passions. Together with my guest, we provide the knowledge, insight, skills, inspiration, and encouragement you need to find your happy. Today I'm joined by guest Anusia Gillespie. A former associate and the founder of Banava, Anusia is bringing personal branding to the legal world and helping lawyers design a career that's in alignment with their personal brand. Based in Boston, Banava provides a one-stop career resource for attorneys, whether on the partner track or in search of their next opportunity. Today we chat about her non-traditional approach to law school, the work she does to serve attorneys, and learn why she named her company Banava. All right, let's get to the show. Hello, lovely lawyers. I'm so excited to introduce you to my new guest. Her name is Anusia, and she runs a consulting firm in Boston. Anusia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and talk about happy lawyers. It's a great cause.
Fantastic. I would be really interested in having you kind of just describe kind of your journey into being a lawyer and to getting to where you are today.
Sure. So it's been a long time coming for me. I actually have an elementary school project that talks about how I'm going to be a lawyer when I grow up, and saw my aunt. She was in law school. My dad actually went to law school later in life, never intending to practice law, but to inform his business. He's in the healthcare industry. And I looked up to them. So kind of always had this plan to go to law school, undergrad, legal studies and business, and then did a bike ride from San Francisco to LA. That was really, really challenging. And after that, decided, okay, I guess I'm ready for law school.
How did this bike ride come about?
So after my undergraduate school, I wasn't someone who was ready to just jump right into law school and go all the way through. So I wanted some time. And I went out to California and worked in a couple law firms. And while I was there, a friend who I had met, she was doing this called AIDS Life Cycle. It was raising money for AIDS research. And it was a 545-mile bike ride from San Francisco to LA cycling. I've ridden a bike, but I'd never cycled before. And so I signed up for it. And I did every leg of the ride, and it was incredibly challenging. And I decided that after that, I thought I was ready for the challenge of law school.
That's so fantastic. Already, there's so many parts of your story that are indicators that you were going to be successful at whatever you did in life. Like, you just had such a good mindset going into kind of the different stages of your life. And with your dad and your aunt, really good role models for different ways to use law school. I think that's so great. And I think that's really, I don't know, do you agree that kind of set you up to think about things differently?
Yeah, definitely. When I say that, I had an open mind about what I was going to use my law degree for. And truly, before I went to law school, I was like 99% sure I didn't want to practice law for my career. And the reason I had that option, the reason I was open-minded was because I saw, okay, yeah, you can, my aunt's now a senior partner in a firm. You can use your law degree this way, but there's also this other option where it's a really powerful tool in business. And I think without having seen my dad doing that, I wouldn't have known.
But so you did practice for a little bit, and how was that for you?
I did. So I went to law school, and everyone tells you have to work at a firm to round out your education. And I'm glad I did. I think that's absolutely true. I learned a lot, and it informs what I do now because I now better understand. I work with attorneys, a lot of attorneys who are in mid-sized, big law environments. So it allows me to better understand them and the environment that they're working in. And it just, you're working around really smart people. It's good training. And I feel like
the pay's not bad either.
Right, exactly. That part's not so bad either. Well, and speaking of that, I knew that if I came out into the legal industry and did what I'm doing now immediately, people wouldn't respect me. That's the way the legal industry is. They would think that I wasn't able to get a big law job. So I needed to check that box for credibility in the legal industry, just from a strategic perspective. And then I learned a lot from incredibly smart people. And I use a lot of what I learned in kind of what I do now. I mean, it's nice to be able to draft my own contracts with confidence,
I really think that that's great that you went through that whole process with so much intention. Who was somebody guiding you along this process, or how did you come up with all this? Like, how did you know to think about going to law school as something for business you got kind of from your dad, but did he talk to you about it, or did you just kind of see him modeling it?
Yeah, I saw him modeling it. And so very early on, I worked in college in the summers and stuff. I worked in law firms. And then in that kind of gap period between undergrad and law school, I worked in a couple different law firms, both in California and in Boston. And I knew very quickly that it wasn't going to be a place where I would thrive because of the incentive structure. I'm someone who really values open communication, collaborating, efficiency, and these are things that law firms don't currently embrace. And that's part of my mission, is to get business best practices into law firms so that someone who in elementary school says they want to be a lawyer can come up into the legal industry and be supported in that dream. But so I knew at 23 that probably wasn't going to be the best option for me. So I started researching what attorneys do with their law degrees, and, Happy Lawyer Project. I guess I had my own Happy Lawyer Project just for my own research. What makes people who have a law degree happy and successful, either in law firms, in the legal environment, or what else do they do with their law degrees? And I approached going into graduate school that way. I did the JD MBA, and I did the MBA as that part of my story and educational piece that I could use my law degree in a different way and be informed in business. And I also did an independent study on firm management and attorney incentives within school. So I guess it was, to answer your question, self-guided, just figuring it out. I've always been very focused on making my career work for me. And so just kind of learning as I go. I wish I had someone guiding me. That would have been nice.
Yeah. And my story is very similar. The reason I call it the Happy Lawyer Project, I don't know if I've ever shared this, is because I, as a first year, read Gretchen Rubin's The Happiness Project.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I literally called it. It was my own Happy Lawyer Project. And after that, I started reading all the books about happiness and self-development and personal development. And then also, all the lawyering books on what people do with law degrees. And I don't know why it didn't occur to me to do that research before law school, because I did take time off between or even during law school.
Right.
But for some reason, it really took kind of that first 8 to 10 months of being a lawyer to get it in my head that I should kind of figure out what I had gotten myself into and what I wanted to do with it and how I was going to make the most of my life and the opportunities I had been given.
Mm-hmm. And that's a very standard mentality. And even when I was in law school, all of a sudden there's this very big group think and pressure to go into big law. And we're all of a sudden there's all these type A competitive people in one building with impending debt and this shiny big law holy grail. And you second guess yourself. And it's like anything that strays from big law is, is that okay? Can I do that? And you get kind of insecure about it, and it happens a lot. And so I think that's part of it, is where people just go through, they're like, okay, this is what I'm being told to do. This is what everyone else is doing. Great. And you kind of stop thinking for yourself.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there isn't as much support as there should be at law schools for law students who are thinking about alternative routes.
Correct. And I mean, in fairness to them, law schools are businesses, and it looks much better for them when their students go into big law and then they can report the higher salaries. So,
and I think also they would probably be more supportive if you came in with a clear plan. It's not their job either to kind of decide for you and present you with options. You kind of need to take control of your own life. So I think if you were a student who came in and said, I came into law school strategically to do this and this and this, what connections and opportunities does the school have? That would be easier for them to work with than for you to say, I don't want to practice law. What else can I do?
Right. And they just simply don't have the time to give individualized career guidance and advice to each student. So that's very much on you to do.
Agreed. So now you're in big law. You want to start this consulting firm. Mm-hmm. How did that transition work? How long did it take from when you decided to, start the process to when you actually left the job?
So it had been a long time coming in terms of building my process that I now use with my clients and figuring out the best business model. So honestly, I feel like I've been building this business for 7 years now. I just didn't have a formal business plan. And then I think it was, quite frankly, within a month or two of being in my firm, even though it's a very good firm, they're really good to their people. They have partners, senior partners that have been there for 30 years. A lot of the paralegals have been there for 30 years. I just heard actually that they're the biggest donor for charitable donor firm in Boston. So, great support, great culture. But as I said, at 23, I knew that the incentive structure wasn't going to work for me. And once I was there, it was kind of like, okay, that's what I thought. Yep, it's true. And so even I was there, I was working really hard. I got really good reviews. I was doing what I needed to do. But at the same time, right when I got there, I was already planning how to leave. And I had,
so did you have any anxiety around that? Did you feel, because I know a lot of people who use law firms, and I think rightfully so, as a stepping stone. And I think law firms should also welcome that because they know that everyone can't make partner. But I know some people who do that have anxiety about it and feel like they're taking advantage or being dishonest or something. Did you have any of those feelings?
It did, because the firm was really great to me. So, you know how, with OCI, after you work there your second summer, and then you get the offer to then come in after your third year. Well, I worked there my second summer and then was accepted for the JD MBA program and said, okay, well, I'm actually, going to be an extra year. And they held my offer for me. And then even my fourth year then in graduate school, I had extra time. And I asked if I could come in and so that, and work so that when I came full time, I could really hit the ground running. And they let me come in. I worked 25 hours a week. So they really catered to me. And so I did feel a sense of loyalty. I felt that they were really good to me. At the same time, business is business and this is my life. So it is what it is.
So do you think it'd be great if there was a space for that conversation, like a frank conversation at the beginning of your career where you could say, these are my goals. This is what I'd like to get out of this place. Not necessarily that I'm going to leave in a year, but I'm not necessarily focused on being a partner, but I am focused on doing good work and building really good relationships here. Because for the law firm, that could mean going in-house and being a client. That could, there's lots of things that you could do that would reflect well on them.
Right.
And if they helped you in that process, the likelihood that you would go into something that would reflect well on them is increased for them versus kind of burning a bridge and causing this kind of, it's not that negative, but it's just not as positive as it could be if there was space for a real conversation. But I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if I'm being idealistic.
Yeah, I think that that's idealistic at this point in the industry in terms of having that conversation while I'm in law school, because they can just plug someone else in. They don't know how good of work I'm going to do until you get there. But once you're there, I think the way that the industry is now, once you're there is room, depending on the culture, of having a conversation. I've heard stories of people in big law saying, I have these other career goals. I'd like to talk to you about that because I've been here for 5 years and I value you. And having those conversations and then having the firm say, okay, well, you should probably start looking for another job now. You have 2 weeks. Thanks, we're done here. So I think that it's still a risk to have that conversation, but kudos to people who try, I guess. It depends on the culture, but I agree with you that it's just good business, but that's just not the way that law firms think right now.
They do take it very personally, I think, when you decide to leave, especially if you're good and they don't see the immediate benefit to your next move. They can feel very slighted, which unfortunately, it just seems like bad. Agreed. It's a bad way to run business, but I know that law firms aren't run by businessmen, so they kind of run them the way that the industry, it's kind of an industry standard is the way it's run. They move in a pack for the most part.
Right. And they haven't adopted best business practices yet and really understood that cycle of going in-house, of staying in the community, of, just maintaining your reputation by the way that you treat people on their way out.
Yeah. The firm I'm at now, they do a really good job of that. And that's something they've really been working at and have really see the benefit of. And I think part of that is being kind of a leader in a smaller market.
Yeah.
So they are seen as setting the standard, and people rarely, leave to go to other firms. People are usually leaving to go into the community. So they have kind of their alumni all throughout the community. And so they really do see the benefits of raising people to be loyal and give back. So there is hope in certain circumstances.
Yeah, and I think, there's this big evolution in the legal industry going, like there's, all these pushes to have more business thinking, and some firms are forward on that. It sounds like your firm is, and other firms are lagging behind. So it's just kind of when we'll build enough momentum to get the whole industry there.
So let's get back to your firm and you're moving into consulting. So I've interviewed a number of coaches. And so I'd love you to talk a little bit about how consulting is different and kind of what you provide on top of just kind of a coaching service.
Yeah. So I love working with attorneys one-on-one and guiding them through a process to find an authentic place to drive their careers forward. And the reason why I've settled on the term consultant as opposed to coach is because of my industry knowledge and research. And I feel that consultancy better reflects that. So I work with two different types of client. I work with attorneys who are rising in the firm and are on senior partner tracks and are starting to think about business development or have already thought about it, but aren't getting much traction and just really need support in that area, which I find is very common, and it's really helpful for them to schedule it in like you would schedule in the gym. Otherwise, it just gets pushed to the side. And I also work with attorneys who are transitioning. So big law to big law to small law, big law to in-house, government to startup, whatever it is, small firm to nonprofit. And so having always been fascinated by the question of how people use their law degrees and having an open mind about that and starting really researching it in earnest 7 years ago, I have industry knowledge of how attorneys rise in the firm. And I also have industry knowledge of where people go outside of law, what those trends are and what works and what doesn't. And it kind of in that transition, what people need. So, for example, going from government to a early stage startup, you have to be a very specific person to be able to do that, to go from a very, very structured environment to complete chaos.
I think there's those who would argue that the government is also complete chaos in its own
well,
ways.
That's true, but at least you know how you're doing. At least there's all of these procedures in place. So finding something that would allow you to have that autonomy, that driving business forward, all those pieces, whatever it is you want from that move in a way that supports you so that you can still be successful instead of just guessing. So, bringing that research into my process that I use with clients is how I would differentiate my services from a pure coaching platform, which I think is much more helping people discover and clarify thoughts that are already within them.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess there are other people who do consulting. Why did you decide to go out on your own instead of start out in another operation? I
couldn't find anyone who does what I want to do. And so I guess I didn't really have an option. I would have loved the support of a firm and resources and camaraderie. I'm a very social person. And that's great in developing my firm and business. But a lot of time in creating your own business, there's a lot of heads down at the computer research time and isolation. So it would have been great to start out at a company that was doing this, but that doesn't exist. And that's actually the reason for the name of my company, Banava. I was researching and trying to find a company that is committed to happy attorneys on the partner track or, moving to something else. And I found companies that do business development. I found companies that just help people leave the law.
But there's lots of those.
Right. But there's no one who's just like, I'm going to support you in your best career, leveraging your law degree.
Oh my goodness. Yes, that's it, exactly. I mean, that's part of the reason that I started this podcast, because I feel like it hopefully is a first stepping stone for people who want support. Just to hear that there are other people who are happy, who have law degrees, I think can really open people up to the possibilities. Mm-hmm. And whether that means staying at a law firm or leaving, practicing or not practicing, you can be happy and you don't have to kind of buy into this story of the grind and the money, or throw a grenade on your life and leave the law, and open a cupcake shop.
who are you to tell someone that leaving the law is the right option for them?
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right message.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that the only answer to solving the unhappiness, because I think a lot of it, and I talk about this a lot on all the interviews, a lot of it is the mindset. And we talked about this a little before we got on. There's a lot of things we believe we have to do as big law attorneys or ways in which to be at a firm that aren't necessarily true and become very limiting and very oppressive.
Right.
And there are a lot of ways in which it is really hard, but some of them are self-imposed, and kind of sorting through all of that is really important. And I think the people who do well and who survive and manage to have kind of well-rounded lives start to see through all of that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so just, allowing attorneys to open their minds a little bit in that way. And, my mission is really to positively influence the U.S. legal industry. So with that kind of mission, it's supporting attorneys in whatever is their best and most successful career. And so starting to introduce some of what you're speaking to is some of those stories that in your head aren't true. So let's kind of get it all out there, clear the cobwebs, and have an honest conversation.
And I guess, what kind of people are you seeing coming to you? What is their commonality that makes them open to consulting? Because I know that a lot of attorneys, even that I speak to, are so unwilling to invest in themselves, despite having invested, $250,000 in their degree.
Right.
Now are like, I can't spend a couple $100s on coaching.
Right.
At what point in their life are they that they're willing to make this investment?
So for attorneys rising in their firms, that's an easier conversation because a lot of times the firm is paying for it. So the money piece is taken off the table, and then it's just convincing them that their time is worth it aside from, taking them away from billing. And, this hour will actually bring in more business because then you're actually bringing in clients and rising up in the firm that way. But for individual attorneys, so I'll talk to that in terms of attorneys thinking about career transition a lot. So first of all, a majority of my client base are women, and I don't have the research on that, but my hunch is that they're just more, and maybe it's because I'm a woman, I don't know, but more open-minded and collaborative in thinking about their career.
I would also just interject that it might have a little to do with the fact that women are also allowed to think more flexibly about their careers.
What do you mean?
In some ways, men are expected to make lots of money and be breadwinners. And so they kind of get locked into a track mentally very early on. Whereas I think even in today's day and age, women have the option. Like a woman, if you wanted to, you could stay home and you could just not work. Like most men don't even think of that as a valid life option. So I think it's hard for them to think more flexibly about their careers because they're just really
structured.
Yes. And the expectations from them are just very different socially. But I just wanted to give men they also have a hard time and not just give women all the credit.
Yeah, they definitely do. I think it just takes them a little longer to kind of get over the hump and say, okay, I'm going to be committed to this and work someone on it.
And I think more and more men are, especially I think the younger generation of men think much more flexibly about their lives.
I agree. Absolutely. So the majority of people who come to me, first of all, law students who want to think about other options, and I will go as a visiting advisor and speak with some of the law students. And then in terms of clients for my business, it's really people who fall in two buckets. The people who are like 6 years out and under, who have maybe paid down their loans and are now kind of picking their heads up and looking around and saying, oh, there's a big world out here. Maybe what do I really want to do? And then on the other end, people who have already had a career in law and say, okay, did that. Like now I want kind of my next adventure, and what's that going to look like?
That's so great. And I think that it's so wonderful that you're able to work with such a wide variety of people, because I think that must be great for you to kind of develop your skills and really be able to offer people a lot of impactful advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I find that, so my process consists of 4 main phases. So reflect, research, strategize, arrive. So do the introspective piece, have your idealism, pin that to reality through your research, strategize your story and your kind of branding and marketing and visuals so that when you show up, you can be confident in where you're moving and heading towards. And then then, arrive and then actually go through the motions and do it.
And how long does this process usually take?
And so it depends. Very lawyerly the response. But so with the clients who come who are, the 6 years out and under bucket, that process takes a shorter amount of time simply because they don't have as much life to kind of dig through and reflect on. It's more of a finding their leverageable, is that a word? Leverageable.
It is now.
Skills and strengths that they can leverage and move forward, as opposed to like whole life values and readjustments and like really reflecting. So, for example, I've been working with a client in the later bucket who's already had a whole career in law and is now wanting to figure out her next adventure. And we've been working together since June, and we're just now moving into the researching phase versus a client who, big law, 3 years out, and we pretty much finished the reflection and research phase in a month. And then she was out there interviewing. And so it can be in that one phase for many months, or it can be moving through the whole process in 3 to 5 months. It depends where they are and how much work they've already done themselves. So I meet people where they are, and that's through an initial consultation, kind of figure out the timeline with them.
I really like that. I really like that you're so flexible and that it really is catered to the client. So now I would really want to go back to a little bit more about you and how all of this fits into your kind of life plan. So what do your days look like? Are you still pulling the kind of hours you were at the firm? Because I know that starting your own business can be really grueling.
So yeah, I'm working probably more than I did at my firm. I told you they were great. I didn't work one weekend when I was actually, that's a lie. I worked I worked one weekend at my firm, and now it's more than that, but it's because I want to be doing it. So it's a much, much different feeling. It's because I'm thinking about a client and I just get excited or have a thought, and I'm all of a sudden Saturday, researching something or sending an email to myself to, put this on my list of things to speak with them about in our next consultation, because I really care about them and I'm excited and something that I come across. So they're always on my mind.
And to be fair, I think the people who make the best partners also feel that way about their clients.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's possible. I think a lot of people find that hard to believe, but I think exactly your words are the way that I think the people who are happy in partnership feel, and that's what gets them there.
Absolutely. And that's what's so great about having my consulting firm specialize in what I do, because even though I'm not practicing law, my life, my services are very much aligned with and parallel to what a lawyer does. So it continues the process of understanding them. And so my day-to-day, Monday and Friday are my heads down days, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm out and about meeting with people and just doing business development and meeting with clients and all those kinds of things. So I've structured it so that I have kind of content and strategy days, and then days that I'm out and about in the market.
And do you have a physical office? Do you lease a space or?
I do. Well, I have a home office. So Monday and Friday, I use my home office and heads down there. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm in Boston, and I'm in partnership with a company, and I'm able to work out of that office. So
that's really great.
Yeah.
So what's coming up for your business that you're really excited about? What are your plans kind of the next 12 months? What does that look like for you?
So I'm really, really excited. So I originally had a newsletter, when I first started the company officially at the end of last year. And then I realized that I didn't have my voice yet. And I had to be really, really careful about that because of the fear of talking about people doing things with their law degrees that aren't necessarily law. So I have these two very different client sets that also that are also the same. So attorneys rising in the firm, and then attorneys transitioning, but those attorneys rising can also end up transitioning, So I need to speak to everyone and speak to them through a vehicle that they want the content, but that doesn't alienate one side or the other. And it was really difficult to figure out what that voice is. So because I didn't have it, I shut up for the past year. Better.
Sometimes it's important to know when to keep your mouth shut.
Exactly. And just instead in person tailored my message to whoever I was speaking to. But now I've found a way to speak to both audiences, and it's just in highlighting the process and the how to do this, the process that I use. I call it the Banaba Wellspring, because you're finding that reflection piece. You're like digging into your well. And so you find that well for which all your career growth then springs. And that works both for attorneys who are rising and attorneys who are transitioning. It doesn't alienate people, and it ties it into the personal branding process and just inventing yourself to find your best and most successful self. So I'm really excited to start my newsletter up again next week. My new website will be out next week. I'm going to get the newsletter going, and that's my big excitement right now.
And do you work with people who aren't in Boston? Do you do anything virtually, or is it all in person?
Nope, I do. I work with people who are not in Boston. I make sure, though, to always have a face-to-face. So if they're in Boston, our first meeting is going to be back-to-back session, an hour and a half in person, because I think it's really important to build that relationship. And if they're not in Boston, then I really request the first meeting be through a Skype so that we can, know what the other person looks like and just build a better relationship that way.
Yeah. For everything that technology is great about, I think having that kind of face-to-face is still really important when you're trying to build a trusting relationship. And with something like this, you definitely need that.
Yeah. And I need them to be open with me. So I don't know. I just find that it makes a big difference to at least have the first one that way.
Wonderful. So before we wrap up today, I think people will be really interested to know what your take is on a first step that they could take if they're struggling right now to decide on a next step and they're really, busy and they don't have time and they feel overwhelmed, kind of the general story of the lawyer. What could they do to change their life today?
I mean, you said don't have time, but if you're not focused on it, you're not going to go anywhere. So you have to schedule the time. A huge mistake that people make is they'll just start showing up. So if it's business development, just going to a networking event. If you're changing careers, just applying for an interview and without any strategy behind it. And so I would just say, take a deep breath, slow down, go back to the reflection piece, find something for you that you can connect with yourself, whether that's a physical activity. It could be something in the gym that you just change your mindset when you're there. So you're just like very connected with yourself and just not going through the motions. And just you'll start to feel some shifts. You'll maybe start thinking a little differently. So take that time at the beginning, and then that will drive the process.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And what's the best way for people to find out more about you and your work?
My website, it's www.banava.co. Banava means it is what you make of it. So for your career, and we're here to support you in your best and most successful career. And I'm also on Twitter, Banava Co, Facebook. I'm on social media everywhere. And please connect with me on LinkedIn.
Great. Thank you so much. I will put all of that stuff in the show notes so people can find it on the website if they don't have a pen with them right now, because I'm sure lots of people are going to want to reach out. The work you're doing is fantastic.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you for joining me for the Happy Lawyer Project podcast. Please head over to my website, www.thehappylawyerproject.com, for more information from today's show. While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave me your thoughts on the show. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or follow me on Instagram. If you've enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to head over to iTunes to subscribe and review the show. As you know, each rating helps more listeners find the show and helps me get awesome guests on here for you guys. If there's anyone you'd like me to have on the show, or if you'd like to be on the show, head over to my website and let me know, or send me an email at akoma, OKEOMA, @thehappylawyerproject.com. A special thanks to everyone who's left a review, sent me an email, or reached out to me in any way. I appreciate you. Thank you again for spending this time with me, and if you would like to learn more about working in your gift and living your passion, head over to the website for a free gift. Until next time, bye!